Welcome back to VL Speaks with You. This is episode 6. I hope you enjoyed 1 through 5. This week is going to be a little bit different than the first 5. And that is because I am going to take some time to celebrate that yesterday was the beginning of the National Women's Month. And so, when did all of this get started, really? Well, it happened in the recent past. In 1978, there was the National Women's Day that was first organized in Sonoma, California, school district, and they even had a parade in Santa Rosa, and that kind of kicked off the day, March 8th. Then, 2 years later, in 1980, it's called the National Women's History Alliance. They championed that this should be at least a week. So, fortunately, President Jimmy Carter, who was the president at the time, he said, yes, I back that up. So, he proclaimed that week, the week that March 8th falls in, would be National Women's Week. And then, fast forward to 7 years later, Congress passed a law proclaiming that the month of March would be celebrated as National Women's Month, which is great. There's a quote that I'd like to read to you by Jimmy Carter when he made this proclamation, so I'm going to read it. Quote, "Too often, the women were unsung, and sometimes their contributions went unnoticed, but the achievements, leadership, courage, strength, and love of the women who built America was as vital as that of the men whose names we know so well." Well said. And so, especially since 1995, the government has made sure, at least the president at the time, has made sure to acknowledge that March is National Women's Month. And also in the UK and Australia, they observe it. So bravo. All right. Why is this important? Well, it's important to me, obviously, because I am a woman. I can finally say that with some sense of security and pride that I am no longer a fledgling female and a young lady or any of those things. I'd like to say that I'm a lady. And unfortunately, I do have a few people that call me lady, which is nice. But being a woman, at first, I remember when I was younger in my 20s thinking, I'm not really a woman yet. Like, I don't feel like I'm in my own skin yet. I don't really know who I am. I'm definitely a female, and some may call me a chick or a dame or a broad, which are very old terms, old world terms. But I wanted to feel like, yes, I can say I am a woman. And that probably started in my actually early 40s. I started to say, yes, I'm a woman. I'm not a girl, and I'm not anything but that. I remember seeing an interview with Oprah Winfrey and Maya Angelou, and they've had many interviews, which is great to see them. Love that connection between them as student and mentor and friend and a mother kind of daughterly energy. It's very beautiful. But Maya mentioned something to the tune of there being a distinction between a female and a woman. And then she went on to describe it, which I don't remember all the specifics, but that part of it really stuck with me, that there is a distinction. And so if you're watching and you're a woman, or you're a male and you definitely have a mother uh, or a mother figure, what does that mean to you? I know what it means to me, but I think it's important that you know what it means to you. Because when you look back on your lineage, there is a long line of women and females that came before you. And what do they represent to you? And how do you honor them? And how do you observe them in your life and respect them? Empirically speaking, I look back on my father's maternal side of the family. My great great grandmother, they called her Ma as a term of endearment, Ma Tomasa. And she was actually sold into slavery as an adult woman. And she had a daughter who was, I believe, a teenager at the time. And I have family members that have done our family tree on my dad's side. And this woman bought her own freedom. Her daughter was literate, which was unheard of. She was reading, she could write. And this woman bought her own freedom. And then her offspring eventually gave birth to my great grandfather, which is my father's grandfather on his mom's side. And I see the tenacity and the resilience that this woman had, and that the women in that lineage have. Incredible amount of resilience and smarts, incredibly bright, intuitive women. And what that lineage then bred and what I see has been passed down to me. And it makes me proud. You know, on my maternal side, my great grandmother and grandmother, these were also tough women. Both of my grandmothers, when they came to work in New York City, they had to deal with being a woman and their minority ethnicity status. And while they were both very talented and intelligent, they were working in the fashion district in the factories as seamstresses. And they worked their tails off in horrible conditions. I think of my mother, her resiliency, her tenacity, what I've learned from my aunts, women that I'm very close to as an adult. One is a retired doctor, the other one is retired with her master's in education, worked in the Board of Education, taught at NYU. I look at my great aunt, my grandmother's sister on my dad's side, brilliant, in university at 16 years of age, unheard of, became professor emeritus. She passed away a few years ago. Her sister, my grandmother, will be 97. She's the last of her tribe. My mom, the last of her tribe, and she was the eldest. I just look at these women, I'm just in awe of them, of their tenacity and their ability to thrive and overcome. I look at me and my sisters, and then my soul sisters and friends and colleagues, and I see how I've seen so many women be the backbone of organizations. They are the backbone and the strength and the foundation of organizations. And I admire them. I also feel very fortunate that I can look back and see there are key women throughout my life, and males, but of course we're talking about women right now, but key women in my life that have been my champion, always cheering me on, loving me no matter what. Two of them come to mind, Linnea and Betty. Betty just turned 99. These women have seen a lot and they've been through a lot. And yet, they maintain a sense of decorum. They're tough, they're strong, but they're also incredibly loving and supportive. And remember that we need both, right? The male and the female, the masculine and the feminine to coexist. The thing is that there needs to be respect and honor from both sides of the fence going in both directions. Yes. So I want to feature someone because there are plenty of women now that we can look to for inspiration. Women are taking everything by storm and doing it beautifully. Not every single one, but a lot of them. And so I applaud for them. I applaud for them and praise them. And that's wonderful. I'm going to go back in history. While there are thousands upon thousands upon thousands of women and thousands of years that we can track back through, I'm going to go to the late 1800s. And the reason for that is because I read a quote, and you'll see that quote at the end of this video. So I'm not going to tell you what it is so that you can see it. And don't fast forward. Take it all in. Take it all in. But her name is Helen Keller. And the woman that was her companion for the next 50 years after they met is Anne Sullivan. So she was born in 1880, and at 19 months of age, she contracted this unidentified illness. But what happened is that it caused her to be deaf and blind. So this was 19 months of age. So fast forward to 1886, the mother's like, okay, she has a way of communicating with us, and that's fantastic, but I'd really like more for her. So she starts to do her research and connect with people all over. And she was inspired by a character in a Charles Dickens book. And so she finds herself connected to, I believe it was the director of the Perkins Institute for the Blind. And he connects that family with Anne Sullivan, who was an alumna at that school. And she was 20 years of age when she went to go work with Helen. And as I said, they continued their relationship for 50 years. So she started as her governess, which meant that she was also her teacher, teaching her how to communicate with everyone else and to experience the world. And then also helped her in her process of going to school. So not only did she learn how to communicate in her own way and eventually find her voice, but she went to the Perkins Institute for the Blind. Then she went to a school for the deaf. Then she went on to the Cambridge School for Young Ladies. And then she was able to get sponsored by a couple to go to the Radcliffe College of Harvard University. And don't you know that she was the first deaf and blind person to earn a bachelor's degree? That's momentous. With all that she kind of had going against her, seemingly, she rose above it. She rose above it. And it also means that she worked very hard. So not only did she accomplish that by the age of 24, then she went on to write 14 books. She worked for 44 years for the American Foundation for the Blind. And she campaigned for those with disabilities, for women's suffrage, because remember, she was born in the late 1880s, so she saw a lot, and she passed away in 1968. She also worked on advocacy for labor rights and for world peace. Kind of a beautiful story. And I remember seeing the movie, The Miracle Worker, when I was very, very young, and I was completely in awe of this. So that's why I bring her up, because she is one of many. But I figured she had so many things to overcome, and she did. And she lived an incredible life, a full life even, and did so much for herself and for others. So let's turn that mirror on ourselves. Turn it on. You turn it on yourself and say, so what am I doing with this gift of life? That's why it's good to know about history, your own history and lineage, and also for those that came before you. Because all of these women that came before us paved a way for us, not to lose our femininity and join in ranks and try to be men. No, to maintain all of the beauty that is us and use it for better, for the good of humanity, for the good of this incredible planet, for the good of life. I mean, after all, women conceive and give birth to children. It's huge. It's a big thing. So what are you going to do with this precious life? All right. Start with loving yourself and taking care of yourself, and be kind to yourself. That's for starters. Alrighty. Well, I always like to keep it under 15 minutes or thereabouts. So thank you for joining me for episode 6, and I look forward to seeing you again. And next time, I can have some more interesting information for you to utilize. Be inspired. Make it a wonderful day and have a great weekend. Thanks for joining me. Ciao.